Welcome to O's Across the Pond, the show covering all things Baltimore Orioles, but from a fresh European perspective. Join us for the highs, the lows, the heartbreaks, and everything in between. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just discovering Birdland, this is your home for passionate, across-the-pond Orioles talk. Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of O's Across the Pond, a fancast for all things Orioles with a European twist. I'm Thomas and Matt is joining me today.
Hiya guys.
Hi Matt. And this week we welcome an extra special guest into the studio. This man needs no introduction, but we're going to give him a short one anyway. An extensive career in the minor leagues as part of the Nationals and Orioles system. He's now moved into the world of sports media, setting up his own organisation and presenting a hugely successful podcast, amongst many other things. And of course, a proud family member in the world of baseball royalty. It's none other than Ryan Ripken. Welcome, Ryan.
Well, thank you for the welcome. You know, that was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, right? But no, I appreciate that wholeheartedly, right? But you know, at the end of the day, too, I'm just Ryan. I just like being able to chat and talk with you guys. And I'm really excited, and I'm just so thankful that I could actually join you guys where it's not midnight, it's not 2 a.m. You guys are constantly staying up to watch the birds. I'm glad we can almost all kind of be on a somewhat normal time schedule.
Thank you very much. So we're just gonna take a quick talk about your career in baseball, both on the field and behind the mic, and a quick look at where the O's are currently at before heading into a few fan questions. So do you want to lead the way, Matthew?
Yeah. We thought we'd sort of kick off things about your minor league career, and thought we'd get your opinion on how you reflect on all of that. Now you've got a bit of distance from it.
Yeah. So, you know, I guess now I feel like we're the older group now, because when you're a teenager and a kid, you think that you have all this time. And when you heard people say, hey, it's going to come to an end, whether you go and play 20 years, which I had a family member do that, played 21 years in the big leagues, or in my case, where I had a chance to play professional baseball for 8 years. In an instant, though, it feels like it was only a couple years, right? Time flies. But it was an experience that had its ups, downs, and everything in between. You know, so I signed and started my career at the Washington Nationals, and then had a lot of adversity, injuries. Then when I was healthy, I didn't play well. I thought my career was over, and had a chance to join the Orioles, kind of got things together, and, was able to get to the AAA level. Obviously, things didn't end the way that I wanted to, but, you know, the minor leagues is a special place for a lot of reasons. With the old minor leagues, even I put myself in that category because they changed things up. You really find out what you're made of, both on and off the field. The stories, I love telling minor league stories. Every Monday, I release a new one with people that have been through it, because it is an experience like no other, but I wouldn't change it for the world. You meet great people, you learn a lot about yourself, and it really helps you deal with life. Baseball in general is a game of failure. What sport where they said, hey, you are one of the best in the world, if you go out and fail 70% of the time, 75% of the time? That's insane. So that's really helped me move on to the next career, where I got to be honest, when I get rejected or I mess up and I fail, I go, oh, that's not too bad. I'm used to it. I did this all the time. I struck out 5 times in a game. I'd rather get rejected 5 times in a game.
Brilliant. And what would you sort of, if you had to pick the best minor league stadium you ever played at, or your favorite minor league stadium, what would you go for?
Oh, man. There's a lot of cool options. You know, one of the older stadiums at the time. Going to play in Reading against the Phillies was fun. Small, kind of had a smaller ballpark feel. Never took advantage of that as a hitter, by the way. But I did enjoy being up there. I always appreciated the affiliates I played for. I love playing in Frederick. Aberdeen obviously has a special place in my heart just for my family being from there. So I didn't want to give the too much bias. Frederick, Bowie, Delmarva was all great, but away ballparks, Reading and going through all this. Charlotte's beautiful. In AAA,
Nice.
Charlotte is gorgeous. An experience that I'll never forget is Vermont. You can take that for what it's worth. I love Burlington, Vermont. It was one of my favorite cities to visit. Beautiful. We weren't allowed to shower in the clubhouse behind left field. They preferred our team did not do that. And the home clubhouse, their clubhouse burned down when they were on the road playing us in Aberdeen. So talk about like minor league and putting it all together. But I'll tell you what, like being out there on a crisp, cool summer night in Vermont, I just thought it was really cool, despite maybe not having the best facilities. So I'll say Reading and Vermont for the other reasons.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Nice. So, obviously, a few years back now, Ryan, you made the jump into the world of sports media. What inspired you to make that change in career, and how have you found the transition and your journey in sports broadcasting so far?
Yeah, I guess what inspired me to move on was realizing there wasn't a lot of opportunities. They're going, you might have dried up the well, right? But in all seriousness, I looked at it and you spend so much time, and it's a hard thing to let go of, because even though you didn't play as well as you could have or dealt with whatever you dealt with, and I tell people this all the time when we talk Orioles, someone's always dealing with something, but the business side of it, the business doesn't care. You got to find a way to succeed. And for me, I didn't do that with my struggles, and I had that crossroads. So I knew that I always enjoyed media, and I think this is fun, right? Like you guys starting this, got an interest in it, passion. That's how I thought about it. I go, I have a passion for media. What the hell is that passion? Like, what do I want to do? Wasn't exactly sure. And to be quite honest, I don't know if I'm fully at the end product of what that's going to be. But when I was realizing that the baseball career was coming to an end, and to make that choice, I told myself I was going to commit to the process. That was the biggest thing. So I tried a lot of different things. I mean, heck, fantasy football in the U.S. is big for the fall. And I went on one of my first opportunities was going on TV to talk about fantasy football, which I didn't get paid, by the way, just went on and talked. And that was one of the first opportunities. And so I don't know where the inspiration maybe just came from. Deep down, I love talking to people. I love storytelling. I know a lot of people would rather hear me talk about what's going right, wrong, and everything in between with baseball, but that was where it started. And in the process, that's where it's evolved to. And it's led to these opportunities. Like we're having this conversation because I committed to a process, right? I committed to do something. And 2022, I officially retired. So it's not a full 3 years yet since I retired at the end of July that year. So just goes to show you, you don't have to have an answer. You can just find a couple things that you like, and but you got to commit to it and then just kind of see where it goes.
And we've seen the amount of guests that you've had on your podcast. Who would you say has been the most guest you've had fun with on the show, and who has been the most insightful?
Man, It's a good question. It's a really good question. You know, one of those surreal moments, where you sit there and go, am I really talking to this person? When Ice Cube came on for the first time last year, who's now a recurring guest, right? That was a funny thing is, I've watched all the movies and followed and listened to his music. So that was kind of like a crap. Like this is crazy. Um, the baseball world is always interesting, but I grew up with that too. And I've really enjoyed doing those legend series again to talk to some of the guys that have walked the walk. One of the first ones that I sat down but didn't release was Larry Walker, Hall of Famer for the Rockies and Cardinals. And, when it led to those conversations that have continued, those were really cool. But I'll even say this, I tell you, like, I'm a storyteller, and this might just even be recently. Lauren Shahadi with MLB Network was awesome because we could talk about the journeys that we went through or that I'm still going. And she told me some phenomenal stories of how to get her footing. And stuff like that. Right. So it's I've been very thankful and blessed to be able to talk with so many great people over the time frame. And maybe I'll have to tease, we've talked to some iconic people on Monday. I haven't really told everyone yet. If people watch the show, they know there is a very big one, might be the largest baseball figure that we've had on. And that we'll air that next week. So let's just say that he's known for having one of the most iconic swings that the game has come to know.
Interesting. That's
Interesting.
Yeah. That'll be buzzing through my head all weekend now, trying to guess who that is. So sort of switching things back to baseball and to the Orioles. Obviously, it's been a bit of a difficult season so far. Is this something you envisaged happening, or could you see a scenario where this sort of played out as it has done so far?
Well, what I've learned in baseball is when you expect something, when you only expect one thing's going to happen, something's going to be you're going to have a rude awakening when you realize that there's just things that you can't really account for. I don't think that anybody, including myself, like that was a surprise. I didn't think that they would get off to that poorly of a start, despite the injuries, despite maybe some weaknesses in the rotation, which, and also with the lineup that you had, you still felt like you had some really good pieces, and it just was one thing after another. And it felt like a team. Sorry, my dog's protecting the place.
Yeah.
But you overall, you want to be able to sit there and have a conversation about when you go through a 162, there's so many different things that can go wrong. And for the Orioles, everything that went wrong happened. And when you're in a locker room and you're in those moments and you're sitting there going, man, how is this so bad? And you're trying everything to get out of it. But you guys know it's when you have one thing go wrong, another thing, it's contagious. And that's what I kind of saw with the Baltimore Orioles is that the young players, it was like you got hit in the face and you couldn't get back up. Not that they weren't trying, but nothing was working. They weren't playing fundamentally. The close games that they usually would win, they weren't. Then if they fell behind, they didn't have an answer. And so that is a reality in this game, is when things get to such a negative place, which it got to, it can snowball, and it's snowballed. And the business of baseball is when you lose, people lose their jobs. And in that case, Brandon Hyde, Tim Cousins departed from the team. And, everyone, could they have had, or Brandon had some role in this? Of course. But the true reality is, there's so many other factors that went into the Orioles, having so much struggles, which hopefully won't be too big of a hole that they can't climb out of, but they got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, definitely. And that sort of leads us nicely on to looking at Tony Mansolino and how, and I know it's been a short space of time, but how do you assess how he's gone on so far, and are there any improvements or the biggest improvements that have sort of taken you by surprise?
So Manzo, by the way, is a great guy, great communicator, good with people, so, and he's been with this team, right? So like it's not like they just came in, he came in this year. He's been with this group for years. So that builds a rapport as well. Quite frankly, too, I said the same thing when Charlie Morton was having his struggles, and you're going to keep a guy on a team, right? Same thing with the Orioles. When you have all these struggles and then you make a decision, the expectations are off now. No one's expecting you to make the playoffs or win the AL East. Go out there and play. And I think that's what Manzo is trying to say. Hey, we need to do some things better, but let's go out and play the game. Let me try to get the guys more in a comfortable setting. And if you can do that, plus with some guys getting healthy, and then you put together one game, then another, good things can happen. And I think that's what I've seen with Manzo, is that he's just been a very calming presence. Realize you can't get it all back in one day, and we're not focusing on what we can do in a week. We can only focus on what we're doing with the next task at hand. And I think he's done a really good job of that. And hopefully that continues to lead to more W's for the Birds, because there is a lot of the season left, despite them still trying to scratch and claw their way back into a playoff spot.
And with that, the chase for that final wildcard spot and the chase to get back to 500, but with the trade deadline coming up in about 5-6 weeks, do you think that the Orioles will be sellers, buyers, or? I mean, me personally, I think looking at the free agency tracker for starting pitchers for next season, is there scope there to try and make a move, get one in at the deadline and extend them before they hit free agency, and go out and get that second, third man in that rotation?
The phrase I like to use is that regardless of what happens for the Orioles in 2025, they are not rebuilding, they're retooling. So what do you need to do to be right back where you are, where next year, again, they can still make a run, because it's baseball and it's crazy and we've seen a lot of things happen, but the Orioles are going to be expected, with the roster that they still possess, to compete to win the American League East next year and to try to represent the AL and go on and win a World Series. That goal and that expectation should still be there for Baltimore next year. So the question that Mike Elias in the front office is going to have to decide is, with your pending free agents, which they have a few, do you want to sell them off because you're going to get a team that maybe is really desperate and gives you something that you want? But also they got to recognize, if you sell those pieces, and there's some young players, there's a lot of outfield prospects, as we know, in the Orioles system, and you can say, hey, you can plug and play them up there. We've also seen that young players aren't going to hit the ground running consistently in the big leagues. You want that to be the case, but there's going to be a form of struggle. And the phrase I like to use before the season, right, was despite the weaknesses of the ball club for every team that they have them, but for the Orioles specifically, they are going to go as far as their young core would take them. And the young core in general underperformed, right? So if you add more young pieces, there's a variance that can happen. I think that Mike Elias, though, he loves a good deal. He loves an opportunity to get great value. And I guarantee that there's going to be a team that's going to want to have a Ryan O'Hearn, a Zach Eflin, a Tomoyuki Sagano. But the question's going to be, are you going to draw a line in the sand? And who do you want to have be a part of your ball club for 2026? And I know everyone's saying the conversation about free agents, you can re-sign them. There are instances where players can come back, but most times they don't. Most times when you trade that guy away, it's saying, we really like you. It's business, but we didn't like you enough that we're going to extend you right now. We're going to gamble and say that player goes somewhere else and he falls in love with another team. You lost that opportunity. So, but I just have a sneaky feeling that the Orioles are going to be there. I feel like they're going to be within 4 games, maybe 5. Yeah. And if that's the case, do you really want to sell off the pieces? And that's where I have a hard time. I think the AL is so wide open. If you can get into the postseason, I think the Orioles, just like 8 other teams, could go on a run and go to the World Series. But I know that's a long-winded answer, but that's the problem that's at hand. I personally would like to see, though, because I didn't ask for this, but I'll add this. I personally would like to see them say, hey, if it's O'Hearn, if it's Mullins or Eflin, Sagano, any of the guys, hey, we want you here next year. We keep you. And if you're keeping those guys for the deadline, you got to find a way to get those deals done for next year.
Yeah. No. Sorry, Matt. Just a quick one. Just a quick yes or no to this one, Ryan. If Charlie Morton's form continues, the last 5 starts he's made, the O's have won 5. If his form continues, does he become a trade piece at the deadline?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yep. I think anybody that's not named Gunnar, Jackson, Adley, Westberg, all those guys are going to probably be available to an extent.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Matthew, sorry.
Yeah, no. I was just about to say a similar sort of thing, really, in terms of on that sort of looking at 2026. Who, in your opinion, do you see being the next man up? Who do you think is coming from the minors that we're going to see in 2026 as a sort of big presence for this team as the team evolves?
Well, it's going to be that stud of a catcher down in AAA. Samuel Basallo. Sorry, Sam. He's a beast. He's an absolute stud. And I want to, before I get into all this, because I have had a habit of this, but I also feel like I have a pretty good pulse of watching guys where they kind of have like that it factor. But in general, people like to put prospects on a pedestal. And then when they don't reach that level, people look down upon them. And let's just use recency bias. How about Jackson Holliday? He comes up as this young kid where everyone's expecting him to be an all-star and better than even Gunnar Henderson, who was the best player on the team, MVP candidate. That was the expectation that Jackson had as being a top prospect, right? And that's unfair. So I don't want to put the expectations that Sam, in this case, is going to come up and light the world on fire. But if we're going to go off of straight ability, the way he hits the ball, it sounds different. And I know we can say that with other guys, but you can go watch BPs, and I watched it over the last couple of years. It sounds different than even some guys in the bigs. His aptitude for the game continues to evolve. He has a strong arm. He's understanding his body more. And his swing almost reminds me a little bit of like with the Astros and Yordan Alvarez, who's a beast. So Sam is going to catch. He can play first. I think that he is one of those guys. If I could add to that list of like who the Orioles would listen to offers for, add Sam to the list of guys that they will not listen to offers for. I think that he is that special. And the crazy thing is that he's learning at such a high rate. The only thing that I hope is that there's no rush. I know you want to win games. Don't rush them. And I think if they do that, you're going to see Sam Basayo have the opportunity to develop into a really, really good player. That's what I hope. But you never know. But his talent is undeniable.
And look, I know we've got to start thinking about wrapping up. But we've a couple of questions that we had sent in from some of our listeners. So the first one is currently the Braves are 10 games behind in their division and 5.5 games out of the wild card. The O's are 11 and 6 respectively. Which team has a better chance of making the playoffs and why? That was from James.
I appreciate. I like that question a lot. I honestly like the Orioles' chances. I think just because I can't figure out what's going on with Atlanta. I thought that they were turning the corner. I really did. And I believe the Mets. I believe the Phillies are going to continue to play well. I just don't. I don't know what the identity is kind of leaning with the Braves. They have so much talent, but they're not winning the games. The only reason I say with the Orioles is because going back to it, I just think the AL is just very open. You know, the Central was off to such a great start with the Twins, the Royals, the Guardians, Detroit. They're the best team in the American League for a reason, right? But when you look around the rest of the American League, there's a lot of parity. And so I think that the Orioles could make up ground against some of these teams. And for Atlanta, I'm worried a little bit that when they got back to being right at 500, that took so much energy. I just don't know if they're going to be able to get back into that with how the Giants and the Padres, the Diamondbacks, the NL Central is really good right now, right? So I think the Orioles have a better path right now than Atlanta does.
Yeah, brilliant. And then one last one we've got, which was from Jeffrey, and that is, do you think we will see Brandon Hyde managing in the big leagues again soon?
I would like to see Hyder get another shot. And I do believe deep down he will. But it might be that he has to hop on as a bench coach. You know, if an opening happens, teams like to do two different ways. Go get a veteran manager, or they try to have that the new up and comer, right? So what are people going to evaluate for Brandon Hyde is going to be the question. Is he that veteran that you trust, where people are going to hold against him that he hasn't won the playoffs, which I don't think that that's fair, by the way, because he's proven he can win games. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's not managing next year, but I think down the road he'll have an opportunity if he continues to be in the right places, because he did a fantastic job over the last 3 years up until the Orioles were having that woof start to the year. They had the most wins in the American League from 2022 until, that part of 2025. So, yes, I believe that. And also, are there any other fan questions? I can push a few more minutes if you want.
I've got one.
You got one.
For you.
You got one? All right, let's do it.
Simple yes or no again. Do we see a Gunnar or Adley extension this year? That might be a bit cheeky as well, obviously, with connections, but
Gunnar, no. I just think with Scott Boras as an agent, and with where the CBA is going in another year, where they're going to have to negotiate, I think that's. I would be surprised. Not that the Orioles aren't trying. I just would be surprised. Now, Adley, I feel like that could be a yes. But I also think that's contingent on how Adley finishes this season.
We all understand the situation with Gunnar and obviously being a Boras client. Could you, I've asked this to a few people we've had on the pod, could you envisage where they would explore a deal like the Royals did with Bobby Witt, given 3 years past arbitration, but then you're left on the hook after those 3 years. I don't know. Because I think if you know, the age of Gunner, if you turn around and say to him, there's 500-600 million at his age, are you going to turn it down?
I wouldn't, but that's just me, you know? Yeah, it's not, where do I sign tomorrow? I mean, heck, I'll do it for a lot less, right? You know, I think Bobby Witt's case, Jackson Merrill's case, two situations where young stars extended, and people were upset with Jackson Merrill extending early. There's a stability that you get with extending, but there's a risk both with the team and the player, right? So I worry that with Scott, they want to maximize, you know, and I don't blame him, because if Gunnar signs a deal and then he doesn't play well after that, okay, he has that money at least to go with. And this is life-changing money regardless, right? If it was even $100 million, like it's tremendous, but it's whatever you think your value is worth. And that's where that conversation goes. I don't see it being like Bobby Witt Jr., who Bobby Witt and Jackson, they were content. Like, they were content with what they had, and they were content knowing what the upside would be, you know, or the downside. I just have a hard time seeing that. I think it would at least have to take $400 million, like at least, to have that conversation. And quite frankly, I just don't see that being, the Orioles are going to dish that out right now. For all the guys that you have. So yeah, if that answers it. It's just, I believe in my heart of hearts that Gunnar wants to be an Oriole and be a legend in Baltimore. But the reality is, especially with Scott, he is going to make sure that he feels, unless you prioritize it, like Corbin Burns prioritized, he wanted to go home, then you're going to wait for the best value of a deal. And so that's what we're going to have to wait and see. In Birdland, I'm sorry, that's not what you want to hear, but that's the kind of reality when you deal with Scott Boras, and he's the best in the business at doing that. And I think that we're going to see a lot more discussions about all of this and salary cap, and if there should be one, not be one. That next CBA is going to be really interesting of what happens, and especially how it comes to how future contracts will look.
Thank you very much. We've really appreciated having you on, Ryan. It's kind of a big deal for us. You're part of Baseball Royalty, so we appreciate you taking your time, and we listen to your podcast. We're all over you on X, so thank you very much.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Yeah, it's been really good to have you on, and thank you for playing a part, because we're all sort of trying to grow baseball in Britain, and it's getting bigger every year. So yeah, thank you for joining the international fans.
Of course. And last thing I want to say with this is, I love what you guys are doing, and we'll set up another time. We'll come back on later in the year. Okay, so you can hold me to that. Come back on. Hopefully the Birds will be in a better position.
Yeah.
But what I love also is you guys are passionate about this. You're passionate about the Orioles, and you wanted to do something with that. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that is amazing. Is that I did exactly what you did. You were passionate. You want to do something. Whammy. Let's do it. Let's go international. Yeah. And I think that's phenomenal. So continue to do the work. Keep going. And I look forward to the next time we chat. And if there's anything you guys need, reach on out.
Amazing. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now.
That's it for this episode of O's Across the Pond, bringing Birdland to Europe one episode at a time. Be sure to subscribe, share, and follow along as we keep the Orioles conversation going from this side of the Atlantic. Until next time, stay loud, stay proud, and let's go O's!